Say hi, Corey.
Hi, honey. How are you?
Say hi, Corey. Say hi, Corey.
I didn't want to be a complete smart aleck today.
Finish.
Twickenham, Richmond, Clapham Junction, and London Waterloo.
Pinched open. That's Tito trying to open and close a window on the train.
She's having slight difficulties over there. Technical difficulties.
Corey, I think you need to help her.
Sorry we didn't get it on tape. We actually had our own little wrestling match going on. I kind of lost, but you know, it's okay. You missed it. Anyways, that's all I had to say. It was quite fun.
There's Corey.
Hi! Look, I went to
Good shot. We're stuck in the underground. See, I told you that's what we were waiting for.
We've reached our destination, which is the Tower of London. And this place is massive. Right now we're kind of looking, I don't know what that was, but this is this massive fortress that not only kept people safe and in, but kept people out as well. So they used it for prisoners, and they used it as a palace at one time, and just so much history. The crown jewels are housed there now. And yeah, there's this story about the two princes and the tower. This is the tower they're talking about. Definitely look that up. And there's so much history. We got one of the best beef eaters that gave us a tour ever. And I'm going to include some of the stories that he told us on the tour here. This is going to be a longer video, but I'm so happy because I love this. This is one of my favorite experiences on this trip.
Look, the moat.
This used to be the moat?
Yep, this used to be the moat. River Thames. It's Bobby. Hi, Bobby.
He then set off with his army, and he travelled round England for 12 years, constantly doing battle with his newly conquered subjects. And then in 1078, William returned to London. Here, at the side of the river, he decided to build a great fortress. We still have it today. There it is through the trees. The White Tower, the Norman Keep. Over 900 years, the Day of Judgment. That's what it meant to us Saxons. William had sent his men throughout the land. This was the first census of these islands. Armed with that book, William knew what everyone was worth. He could now send off for knights, carpenters, masons, soldiers. Those men said farewell to their families out in the country. They came here and spent the rest of their lives working on these defences. But even that wasn't enough. Look what they did in the 13th century. They cut us off from the city. They dug a ditch or a moat all the way round the tower. It took them 6 years to dig that moat by hand. That was 15 feet deeper than you see it today. They then had a brainwave. Come along, lads, let's connect it to the River Thames. Brilliant. Marvellous. It's a tidal river. No matter, said the king. What we'll do is incorporate the dropping of the tide into the design. They thought every day the dropping of the tide would drain the moat and thus keep it fresh and clean. But they'd already dug the moat. It was deeper than the bed of the river. There's no way it could empty. After just a few years of effluent, rubbish, the occasional mother-in-law leaving the walls, very quickly developed on our doorstep the largest and perhaps the smelliest cesspool in Europe. But what an effective line of defence, huh? Can you see Kevin Costner swimming across that? We liked it, we were happy with it. It was smelly in there, but we were safe. So we kept the moat until 1843. In 1843, the Duke of Wellington filled it in, the Iron Duke, fresh from his victories at Waterloo. They made him constable of the tower, the finest reward a monarch could give any subject, make them boss of their tower. The Duke realised we no longer needed a moat, so he filled it in, topped it off with grass. And now that's where we residents take our dogs for a walk in the afternoon. So it's still used for the same purpose. You see what I mean? The dogs go down and they do it.
Yeah, fine. We got it.
When we get inside, we're going to start talking about the uses of the tower. Fabulous uses. Later today, you are going to see the largest perfect diamond in the world, part of the Crown Jewel collection. They've been here since 1327, but there are three main uses we need to consider right now before we set off on this adventure today. In order to understand these stories, we must know this was the fortress in the country. The Normans built many castles, but this was the most important. For here, Norman kings lived, surrounded by Anglo-Saxons. This is the stuff of Robin Hood, isn't it? Wasn't Robin Hood railing against Normans for raising taxes to build yet more castles? Later on, it became a palace. It's still a palace to this day. There's a third use. Look at the walls, built to keep people out. It didn't take them long to realise they were equally effective keeping people in. So we locked up the big ones here, didn't we? Kings of France, Kings of Scotland, Earls, Knights, Dukes, Mel Gibson. Have you seen the film?
What room is he in?
I'll tell you later, Dick. Braveheart, you know.
Yeah, I know.
Hey, they were brought here. And later in the tour, sadly, we will discover that three of them are still here. They lost their lives inside the tower. They were beheaded up there on Tower Green. Later today, we're going to stand on the site where terrible events took place. But another reminder before we set off, it only happened 6 times in English history inside the tower. Only 6 times did we wield the axe in there, so you mustn't rush away with the idea that we spent... Justice must be seen to be done, isn't that the maxim? There's a garden across that road, it's called Trinity Garden. Go in there on the way home. I commend it to all of our guests. In that garden to this day, you will still find the site of the permanent public scaffold, yes. In the Middle Ages, there were no buildings up there, but we had a scaffold ready to go whenever we needed it. A quick lick of paint the night before, they could rush you up there, your head was off before you could say Jack Robinson. Have you heard that saying? Have you heard that saying? Started here. I used it deliberately. Jack Robinson lived in that house. He was the governor of the tower. They say he was so good at arranging executions up there. An honour. Up there, they lost their lives quickly, block and axe. What about us commoners? What about people like you and I? We upset the King of England. What did they do to us in the old days? Tell me. Sent to the colonies. There's people like you and I dragged from here to Tyburn. Marble Arch today. There to be hung, drawn and quartered. You're in the cart. Don't we still say that? You're in trouble? You're in the cart? My mum still says, if something's broken, it's gone west. Have you heard that one? Broken, gone west? She was talking about west of the City of London. There was no return from Tyburn. That was final. What about these men on Tower Hill? On the morning of their execution, we would declare a public holiday. People in the city got up early, packed a picnic hamper, got the kids ready. They arrived here in their thousands to watch the mighty fall, to watch great men fall from grace. Shakespeare wrote about this. Was it not the trick of our English nation, if we have something good, to make it too common, to bring it down? The victim could watch from his cell or his dungeon window as the crowds gathered on that hill, and he knew later that day our bridge. An American chap turned up one day with a truck and said, "Yes, I'll have it." Put it in the back of his truck apparently and took it to Arizona. Yes, set it up in the desert.
Yeah.
Is it still standing over there?
Yes,
It
yes.
kept falling down when we had it. We're proud.
American ingenuity fixed it.
I can feel a song coming on. London Bridges.
Falling down.
Classic, isn't it? The authorities, they're clever people. They waited till it was dark. Waited till the crowd had gone home. And then, discreetly, to be forgotten, they brought the body back to the tower. It was buried here in a small chapel, together with those 3 queens of England. Later today, it's my sad privilege to take you into that chapel. In that chapel, we are going to see where all these famous characters we're about to discuss, we're going to see where they lie to this day. So please remember, even in death, they did not escape the walls of the tower. Just one reason why the Tower of London struck fear into the hearts of these citizens for many centuries. So now, containing our excitement, we're standing in front of Traitor's Gate, ladies and gentlemen, built by Henry III. The last sight of freedom for many people as they were brought to captivity in the tower. It had such an innocent origin. Henry III, the builder king, shrewd man. He reigned between 1216 and 1272. He was the son of King John. That's a king we've all heard of. He appears in all the movies, doesn't he, with Robin Hood? Definitely. Do you believe in Robin Hood? Kevin Costner. That's what this is all about. Those early kings realised straight away, if you bring stores and supplies to the tower through the open streets of London, people like Robin Hood were out there ready to pounce, use the river, use it as a highway. All they had to do was breach the outer defensive wall, allow the River Thames to flow into this marina. They could offload anything they required. But once you breach an outer defensive wall, it is weakened. You must defend. Look what Henry built above. St. Thomas's Tower, named after Thomas of Becket, one of our great London saints, a man murdered down at Canterbury Cathedral in 1170 on the orders of a Norman king. When we built this in 1240, in order to appease his soul, we included within it a chapel, an oratory, dedicated to the memory of Thomas of Becket. That's why it's called St. Thomas's Tower to this day. Go in there later, there's the entrance. But over there in the far corner, seek out that chapel. It's still there, facing yet the Holy Lands to the east. They went down to Greenwich. There at their favourite palace, they suddenly arrested Anne. So sudden was that arrest, Anne was still wearing a thin red brocade dress. Simple dress she had planned to wear at dinner at school that evening. What about that journey back upriver? 6 miles, berated all the way by her captors, freezing cold. She arrived here late that afternoon. She alighted on these steps, threw herself down, sobbed her innocence. She asked for an audience with her husband, the king. None was forthcoming. Standing here that morning was a big man, Sir William Kingston, the constable of the tower. He'd put on his finest robe. They had said to him that morning, be prepared for a very important prisoner, a VIP. Imagine his shock as to that arch came the Queen. She sat there, she looked up at him with a tear in her heart. You will go to the rooms wherein you prepared for your coronation. And with that, she was led off through that archway behind us. Has anyone seen a recent film by Al Pacino, Looking for Richard? Anyone seen that film? I commend it to you all. Richard, Duke of York, his younger brother, were last seen alive in that tower, placed there by their uncle, Richard of Gloucester, a man victim of a long civil war, the War of the Roses. The boys suddenly disappeared from that tower in 1483. They were never seen again. Later that year, their uncle Richard became Richard III. Now, did he do it? Oh, we argue to this day. Some say it was Richard, some others tell us it was Henry VII, others suggest the Duke of Buckingham. It's a whodunit, an Agatha Christie. I don't know the answer. I've read every book I can find on the subject. I'm even writing my own. But But I have to leave it there. I hope I've whetted your appetites and you will all rush from here to the local bookshop. Buy the book. Make up your own minds who did it. Who do you say did? The butler. What about Richard? 2 years later, he died leading an army. The last king of England to do so. A horse. You know these lines. They pulled him asunder. They caught him. They pulled him apart. What did Shakespeare say about this man? Deformed, unfinished, sent before his time into this breathing world, scarce half made up. And that so lamely and unfashionable that dogs bark at him as he holds by them. Humpback, that's what he called him. And all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. We'll leave it there. It's time to move on. Let's go and look at the Great White Tower. Let's see where it all started.
Look, there's the ravens, guys.
We're standing in front of the Great White Tower. Here it is. This is where it started. Built on the orders of William the Conqueror, William I. They started work here in 1078. The work took 20 years to complete. They brought the stone from France. It's over 90 feet high, almost a square in plan. The walls at the base are 15 feet thick. They taper to 8 feet at the top. Look at the top of the turrets up there. Up there you'll see a golden crown. Beneath it, Her Majesty's coat of arms. A simple reminder, this is still a palace. It is no longer a royal residence, but this is where our kings and queens lived for over 500 years. The last king of England to hold court on the top floor was James I, James VI of Scotland. He died in 1625. But I must tell you this, every king and queen of this land, right up until Charles II, no matter where they lived in this country, they always made sure they spent the night before their coronation up there on the top floor, for that became a tradition, a symbolic gesture. Here they were, showing everyone in the kingdom on the eve of their coronation they held the premier fortress. Only they were worthy of coronation the next day. That's why they set off from here to Westminster Abbey. They were starting their reign at the Great White Tower. Now while you're here, you will see these large black birds dotted around. They are ravens, the largest of the crow family. In those early days, these birds were indigenous. They also lived here. I was just checking to see if you're awake. 3 o'clock yesterday, boom, straight over their heads, that one. Good crowd, I'm very proud of you. My boys. But in those early days, these birds were very welcome in every large city. After all, they were a free refuse collection service. If you had food at the table in the old days, you didn't want it, throw it out the window. These birds would take it away. But the Great Fire of London changed all that for us. You've all heard of the Great Fire. 800 yards that way, Pudding Lane, September 1666. A baker preparing bread didn't put his fire out when he'd finished. When we awoke the next morning, half of London had been destroyed. The fire raged on for 4 days. But the tower was saved. 2 quick-witted gentlemen had the forethought to take a regiment of foot soldiers. They went all the way round the outside of the moat, pulling down the residents' houses. This was the first firebreak in history. One of those men was Samuel Pepys. Anyone heard of him? The great diary. American guest, buy that diary. What a souvenir.
An ancestor of mine's will.
Is he an ancestor of yours?
No, he's not an ancestor, but he witnessed his will.
Oh, I'll talk to you later. That's interesting. I've just come back from Cambridge. The other gentleman, our American guest will surely know the other man, Admiral Sir William Penn. And how did we thank him? Looked up his son, William Penn Jr. in that building there, and then sent him off to the colonies. Where he found it? Pennsylvania, no wonder. And they're all here today, aren't they? Put your hands up, Pennsylvanians. Where are they? A wonderful city. I used to stay in Cherry Hill over in New Jersey. And Reading Terminal Market, had a couple of good days there. And I did the museum steps. Yo, Adrian! Oh yeah, gotta do it, huh? Well, there you are. What are we talking about?
The ravens.
The ravens. Suddenly deprived their natural source of food in the city. These are intelligent birds. So approaches were made to the king asking to have these birds destroyed. The king was quickly reminded of an ancient English legend. They say that if the ravens ever leave the Tower of London, this building here, the White Tower would crumble, and with it the monarchy. Charles II said, okay lads, get rid of some of them. But from now on, by my royal decree, you will always keep 6 ravens at the Tower of London. We've done that ever since. Indeed, today, like a good football team, we've got 2 substitutes sitting on a bench down there, ready to jump in at a minute's notice. We're taking no chance. You don't believe a word I'm saying. It's time to move on. Let's go over. Can you let me through? Think to relax and unwind after a busy day at the office. Last Christmas we were closed for a couple of days to the public. We closed at Christmas. I invited my mum up for dinner. We walked around here in the afternoon. It was timeless. It was peaceful. But there was a shock awaiting her as it awaits you today. There, that's where it happened. Where you see the chains? 5 women, 1 man were executed there. For reasons of politics, it happened inside the tower, away from the eyes of the public. 3 of them were Queens of England. Now shortly we're going into the chapel to finish the tour. Before we go in, I think it's only right that I point out the highlights, places I think you must visit while you're here. The crown jewels, gotta go there, girls. The largest diamond in the world. There it is, the entrance, straight across. Well, to you, there are 3 floors of display. Spend a good hour in there. It's heated. Down here is a house you cannot visit. You see that white building? It is the Queen's house. It means exactly what I say. It belongs to the Queen. You'll see a guard standing up there, marching up and down. He is guarding the Queen's house, like Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle. We have to guard it. It was here that Anne Boleyn prepared for her coronation. 3 years later, she returned to the very same apartment to await execution on this site. Catherine Howard, same with her. William Penn, he was there. Jack Robinson, Rudolph Hess. True. Rudolf Hess, Deputy Führer, Nazi Germany, landed in Scotland on the 10th of May, 1941. To this day, we're not sure why, but when they brought him to London for interrogation, they said, yes, the Tower. The next building along is the Gentleman Jailer's house. It was in that plain brick building that Lady Jane Grey spent 7 months as a prisoner. Have we all heard of Lady Jane Grey?
Yes.
This is the saddest story ever.
Yeah.
For here was a young woman, 16 years of age in 1553, placed on the throne of England by greedy men who wanted to manipulate the power of the monarchy. It didn't work. It lasted 9 days. A 9-day wonder. Anyone heard that phrase? A 9-day wonder? In the meantime, Mary Tudor, Henry's oldest daughter, some say the rightful queen, later to be called Bloody Mary, she took refuge on the other side of the country. She sat there and waited for the armies to come to her, which they did. In those days, we called her the farmer's wife. Did you know that?
No.
The farmer's wife. The oldest princess to become queen. White hair, red-cheeked farmer's wife. What about these greedy men? They had placed this girl on the throne. They saw their plot failing. They knew it meant certain death. So they sent 3 bishops from this church to St. Paul's Cathedral, get in the pulpit and preach for Lady Jane Grey, get the public on our side. The 3 bishops gave up and rushed off to apologise to Mary Tudor. And what do we call them today? The 3 bishops, do you know? Yes, you do. Come on, go for it. Think about it. The 3 blind mice.
Oh. Wow.
See how they run. They all run after the farmer's wife. She
cut off their...
Yes, you knew that story. Mary Tudor, daughter of Catherine of Aragon, Spanish, Catholic. She came into London with a great army. Here in the Tower, we proclaim her queen. What do we call her now? Come on, we're on a roll here.
Mary, Mary, quite
Mary, Mary, Catholic. How does your garden grow? With silver bells. The mass is back. Cockle shells, trophies awarded on pilgrimage, denied since Henry's reign. And the nuns are back at Westminster. Pretty maids. On the row. Isn't this fascinating? Did you find that interesting? It's all in my book. So Mary Tudor became queen. Her cousin, Lady Jane Grey, languished in that house for 7 months until the 12th of February, 1554, when she was brought down to this site. She was 17. Her husband, Guildford Dudley, a young man, he was held in that chamber there, the Beauchamp Tower. Go in there later. You can still see where he carved his wife's name into the wall, simply inscribed Jane's name into the granite up there. Isn't that evocative? Isn't that the spotlight being shone through the darkness of history? That's what we're about today, trying to make history tangible. Now we are going to go into the chapel now, ladies and gentlemen. Still very much a place of worship. Christian church, Chapel Royal. There are hundreds of do's and don'ts about our behaviour in there. I'm not going to go through the list. I'm simply going to ask you all to treat that building as you would your own place of worship. There are 2 things they say I must bring to your attention. 1, for reasons of Crown copyright, you can't take photographs or film inside the chapel, especially while I'm watching. On the way in, it's only an inch high, but it does have an unfortunate habit of tripping up young ladies. I, at great risk to myself, will stand just inside the front door, rather like a coiled spring. Ready to catch any young lady should she wish to trip. Gentlemen, I'll make sure the ladies get safely seated inside. Thank you. Purpose of the job.
That's where the crown jewels are. Ooh.